A lot of people like to treat Russia as though it were some kind of untouchable, holy entity. Now, the people who do this are a very small minority. I'm not saying that this is a very widespread thing, but it certainly does happen, and a lot of people seem to forget that Russia is still a capitalist country. It is still an imperialist country as well, and in fact they are capable of the same crimes as any capitalist country. But because of their voice for support for Syria and its struggle against U.S. imperialism, many of these facts get forgotten about. Now, here's an interesting news story. The Moscow City Court has ruled to abolish an indigenous rights group, an Arctic indigenous peoples' rights group in Russia that has been active for over 20 years. The latest in a series of NGOs shut down that critics see as retaliation for their activities. In other words, people speaking out against Putin. Now, of course, I'm sure there are NGOs that are being funded by the United States, the UK, etc. This does not mean that all criticism of Russia is foreign money influence, particularly when it's coming from indigenous peoples. Now, Russian authorities blacklisted the Center for Support for Indigenous People in the North Russian Indigenous Training Center as a foreign agent in 2015. I would really like to see some evidence for this, because generally speaking, NGOs funded by foreign states to interfere in the politics of local when an imperialist power is interfering, they tend not to fund indigenous groups, because indigenous groups tend not, one, have no power whatsoever, making the whole exercise pointless, and very skeptical of receiving foreign funding. So I'm actually going to have to call, I'm going to have to call BS on this for the Russian government. I think a lot of this may have to do with Arctic drilling that a lot of these indigenous people don't want to have take place, which could damage a lot of their lands, etc. It could pollute the environment, making it difficult for them to hunt and fish, etc. Their way of life, and on and on. Now, they recalled this liquidation of the organization as an irreversible process like the death penalty. The group's lawyer, Grigory Vapin, told the Commerce and Business Daily on Thursday. Now, they say that Russia's justice ministers say they shut it down over they shut down the indigenous rights group over multiple violations of the country's NGO law. And this is a statement that they also did make to the public as well. But this is an indigenous rights group, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was connected to opposition to drilling in the Arctic, etc. Now, of course, any country is probably going to do this to its indigenous people if they get in the way of capitalist business. I would say maybe the exception would be Bolivia. Maybe. I don't know what would happen or what the difference there would be, but I suspect there would be some difference. It would not be exactly the same thing. But for all the people who supported the Idle No More protests, the Keystone Pipeline, etc., and it's a rightful cause to stand up for it. Don't get me wrong. But for all the people who stood for that, when this happens in one of their chosen anti-imperialist states, which isn't actually anti-imperialist but imperialist itself, doing the same thing, they just completely look in another direction. They just pretend these things don't happen, or they didn't hear about it, or they come up with some vague justification for it. I'm sorry, but the rights of indigenous people are equal across the world, and they all deserve that same kind of protection. So I just thought I would bring this up because I get the feeling that a lot of people in the Marxist community might not even mention something like this. So I do like, one of the things I do is I do hold our own community accountable for the things that it shouldn't do. Well, not really accountable, but I point it out anyway. You know, what is the old expression, this is Three Dog, and you're listening to GNR bringing you the truth no matter how bad it hurts. And I like to think that that's something I do as well. So I think it's very important that when we do have these quote-unquote anti-imperialist allies, that we do hold them accountable when they do things that are not justifiable. This should not be, this is not okay. And I know what a lot of people are probably thinking as well. Well, you're pretty cozy with Iran, yet we don't hear you criticize Iran that much. Okay, fair enough. I would say making it a law to have to wear a hijab, the headscarf, is nonsense. I am perfectly okay with it being a choice. If you want to wear it, go ahead. But I think forcing people to wear it is wrong. And that's something that I would disagree with Iran on. I don't like the fact that Iran is a capitalist country. But this is the wrong time to be pushing revolution when it's currently under threat by imperialism. But again, I'm only tacking this on here because, even though it has nothing to do with the video, because people would certainly bring it up. And some people would think that I've gotten too close to Iran because of going on Press TV, etc. But I still think that these things are not beyond criticism. And they can still be criticized for the things that they do. And I hope that is a function that I have provided here. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.